First, most of my questions I think will be going to the Minister or certainly the Department. Minister, recently KPMG presented their report into coal LSL. How are you progressing in relation to implementation of this review and report, and when will it be completed? And I understand that some are immediate,
and I will get, because I know your genuine interest, this is a genuine interest for you. So what I will do is get Ms Williams can take these questions for you, Senator Roberts.
Good morning, Senators. Tara Williams, Acting Assistant Secretary of the Safety Net Policy Branch. Senator, you asked how we are progressing in implementation of the recommendations. So as you might know, the government has accepted all 20 recommendations of the review, and in terms of the ones specifically, the 10 recommendations specifically directed at government, the government response to the review identifies that the government will take legislative action to clarify eligible employees and ensure that no eligible employee is worse off. Ensure fairness for casuals to be treated equitably with permanent employees, address legacy coverage issues to ensure fairness and transparency for employees, employers and employers that may register with the scheme, and also to strengthen decision-making, review and dispute resolution to enhance accountability and compliance. And so the government response to the review really highlights that recognises that the reforms are complex and they will require further technical legal advice to ensure that the changes really have the desired impact and benefit for employees and employers under the scheme. So the intention is for consultation and action to continue in the spirit of the review, which, as you may be aware, included consultation with producers, employer groups and peak bodies, employers, employees, unions and also representatives from modern industry stakeholders. And we'll draw on their expertise and stress test ideas going forward. And we'll need to do that closely and methodically with stakeholders, including the provision of exposure drafts of legislation. So the department's just working through that now, and consultations will begin as soon as practicable.
So that I can understand it's still being digested. So when do you think the plan will be available, or that you will have one even if you're not sharing it?
We're working through. So the review also canvassed there was a number of existing proposals put to government and suggest that they provide a really good foundation to start to work through some of those ideas. So the department is working through that now, and in terms of the exact specifics of the consultation, we'll provide advice to government in due course, Senator.
Okay, so some reading parts of the report. I haven't read the whole report. Some can be remedied by legislative changes. Some can be remedied by the existing proposals, and some can be remedied by further consultation. So when do you think you will have the plan together?
So we're working on that now, Senator, and the specifics of that will be a decision for government. But as I said, it will continue in the spirit of the review and be broad-ranging in terms of the consultations. And I think the other thing that the review really recognises is the deep industry expertise from employers and employees in this sector, and also a real commitment by all the stakeholders that were consulted in the review to get this right. And so we'll provide advice to government on how to take that forward, but the consultations will be very much in that vein, Senator.
Senator, if I might just sort of add to that. So we're still some months away, so the consultation process will still take a few months to work our way through, and then following the consultation process we'll need to put our advice to government, so we're still some months away.
So thank you. If I can just go to page 126 of and I'll read the main points. The issues in red that are not...
Just hold on for one moment while the official... Have you got the call?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, good. If we can read it,
Okay.
that'll assist the official reading it with you.
The issues...
Thank
it's
you.
a fairly simple question, even though the question will be long. I'll read out the issues not addressed, the ones in red. Waiver agreements, because the existing proposals do not substantively address this issue. And then conflicts of interest, which the report says are significant. Allegations of fraud, culture, communications, risk management, adoption of technology, data security and privacy, validation of data. So none of them are being addressed, and the existing proposals, it says, do not substantively address this issue. When do you think you'll have something around those? Because they're the core issues. And I accept that's not a complaint about the report. The report is fine, but we need to understand when they'll be addressed.
So, Senator, I could just clarify for you, this section of the report is actually talking about the existing proposals that were put to government before the government realised, I guess, in the process of the government realising that we needed to take a holistic response to the issues in the sector. So these proposals were actually put by stakeholders, and then the government commissioned an independent review. And so the review itself and the recommendations do cover those issues. So I think conflicts of interest, Senator, is recommendation, I want to say 11, but they are all...
Changes to the board structure, composition.
Yep, that's recommendation 13, Senator. So they are all covered by the review, and this is really talking about before we commissioned, the government commissioned the review, that those existing proposals had that gap in them, and so we commissioned the review, which has now addressed those areas.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I'd like to move on to the Fair Entitlements Guarantee, the FEG, as I think it's called. These are simple questions. You may have to take them on notice, but...
Yep.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Manning. My questions, the first one is, has the Fair Entitlements Guarantee and Coal LSL paid any Coal LSL entitlements to one key employees who no longer work in the coal mining industry and were not CFMMEU members?
Senator, it's about the one key workforce case,
Yes.
Senator?
Yeah.
Ms Saunders, who will be coming up from our waiting room downstairs, should be able to answer that for you, Senator. Unfortunately, we couldn't get a room next door today, but whether or not, we wouldn't be told whether or not they were union members. We wouldn't ask that on the application form, so I'm not sure about that, but when Ms Saunders arrives, she might be able to answer it. You might need to repeat the question, though, because
Sure.
Ms Saunders had to come from downstairs.
Sue Saunders, Assistant Secretary of FEG Claims Branch. Would you mind repeating the question,
Sure.
please?
It's from a constituent. Has the Fair Entitlements Guarantee and Coal LSL paid any Coal LSL entitlements to one key employees who no longer work in the coal mining industry and were not CFMEU members?
So under the Fair Entitlements Guarantee, we pay the 5 basic employment entitlements, including redundancy pay, long service leave, wages, annual leave, and payment in lieu of notice. So our consideration of that doesn't actually take into account the extent to which they are funded by another organisation, except to the fact that if there is a redundancy trust fund or whatever, that will step in to pay a portion of the cost, then that is not covered under the Fair Entitlements Guarantee program. So I'm just a bit out of breath from running up the stairs.
Yeah, Chair, unfortunately, just again, there was no availability, so
Yeah.
they have to come up from somewhere else,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
I guess in the sense that any entitlements that were payable under their governing instruments would have been paid under FEG to the extent that they were eligible for it. So, for example, with one key workforce, we paid 346 claimants, a total of 6.8 million in FEG assistance. So that covered a range of entitlements.
What was the total figure?
6.8 million.
Senator, recognising that covered off a number of different employment entitlements.
Okay.
So I don't have the detail of what was made up in that in terms of the different entitlements that were covered. I can take that on notice if you
could,
wish.
please. I'd like to understand this issue because it involves some constituents in the Hunter Valley. And because my next question is that why did the Fair Entitlements Guarantee not pay one key employees who were non-CFMEU members all entitlements owed under the Black Coal Award, including shift penalties, overtime rates? So
Okay.
it's a complex issue, but it should be able to be boiled down once you have the data. So I'm happy to take that on.
You're
Yeah,
happy for
and
us to
certainly-
take-
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine to get you the...
I'd like to get
that's
to the
fine.
bottom of it, that's all.
Yeah, no, understood. So you...
Yeah.
Yeah, understood.
And then we can... my last question, the issues raised in here show that there's been quite a bit of, I won't say neglect, but times are changing in across industry, and the cracks that are exposed in coal LSL itself are significant for employees and in some employers, but they're minor, so they're very important, but they're minor relative to the cracks in the Fair Work Act that have been exposed with changes over time. So changes in industry over time and employment practices. Minister, is the government open to comprehensive review of industrial relations? Because the reason I ask is that Dave Noonan, heads of the CFMEU, the ETU, have said they are welcoming a comprehensive, fair approach to reviewing and revising industrial relations. The Business Council of Australia has told me that they're open to it as well, and they support it. Large employers have told me the same. Small businesses crying out for it, and medium businesses are as well. The Industrial Relations Club, which consists of major union bosses, major employers, major industry groups, consultants, lawyers, are feeding off this, but the workers are not protected. Even unionised workers are not protected today, and they're coming to us. And the Fair Work Act is so complex that people are trying to detour around it, and that's adding even more complexity. So we need to restore fairness, entitlements, and protections to workers, and especially fairness to the small businesses. Are you open to comprehensive review of industrial relations?
I think the government is always prepared to listen to stakeholders and ensure, and it's obviously subject to the ability to get anything through the Australian Senate, to make the system a better one, a more productive one, both for employers and for employees. You do raise a good point, though, in relation to the complexity of the system. And I might just ask the official to come back to the table who was talking about the budget announcements that we had made in relation to, in particular, small businesses being able to better navigate the system, because this is something that you and I had actually spoken about, and we have made a budget announcement, so it's embedded in the budget. But this is in particular to assist small businesses to be able to better understand and better navigate the Fair Work Act as it currently stands. If you could just indulge us for 2 or 3 minutes, I will get you this information.
Senator, the government's providing $5.6 million over 4 years to the Fair Work Commission to establish a dedicated unit, small business unit within the Fair Work Commission to provide tailored support to small businesses to assist them to navigate the system. We're aware that small businesses are a big part of the Australian economy, with 3.5 million businesses employing over 40% of the workforce. However, they do find the system complex. They don't have support of HR managers or legal support, so they also find navigating the system costly. So this unit's designed to provide strategic leadership, small business engagement, and develop improved information resources and case management support for small businesses when they engage with the system. I think small businesses, I understand, make up 50% of the Fair Work Commission's customers, as it were, but they represent 95% of first-time users.
Minister, that's necessary, but it just re-emphasises my point. It's a moribund, complicated, inefficient system, and I'm thinking now not only small business, but also workers in the Hunter Valley for some of the world's largest companies, workers in central Queensland, workers for other large companies. Some of the things that are going on with the injection mandates, COVID injection mandates, are just despicable. And I could tell you stories that would really shock you. We're not living in a third world country, but we're behaving as if we are. And workers have no longer got, some workers have no longer got basic protections, basic entitlements. But it's like we're living in a third world country.
Yeah, no, and I understand, because you genuinely do prosecute this case at every estimate, and in relation to, in particular, the size of the now Fair Work Act and its growth over time.
I'm disappointed you didn't bring along today.
And as I've said, the government is always prepared to work with stakeholders, employers, employees, to take on board the feedback to improve the system. Ultimately, though, changes are to the Fair Work Act itself, and those changes do need to be got through the Australian Senate. And I think the perfect example, and you and I had many discussions in relation to this, was in relation to our omnibus bill. There were significant parts of that bill that would have given more certainty to certain sectors, etc. But we just could not get that through the Australian Senate. With your support, though, we of course rectified the Rosato decision, and that was later obviously confirmed in the High Court of Australia. I mean, that was an incredibly important decision, as you know, because of the uncertainty that it had provided to small businesses, that they may end up with, we'd estimated, it was up to, I think, a $38 or $39 billion liability. We couldn't even get the support, though, from the Australian Labor Party to actually take that impost off small businesses. You worked with us and I was very appreciative of that, and we did make that change. But in relation to the other parts of the bill, again, I'm prepared to work with people. I think a better system, a simpler system, a more productive system, but it has to reflect the needs of both employers and employees. It is a good situation to want to aspire to, but ultimately, as you know, it does come down to the ability to get legislation through the Senate, and we can't get the Labor Party or the Greens to support that type of productive change.
Well, sure.
Senator Roberts, can I just get an indication of how
This
much
will be the
longer?
last question.
Great.
Yeah.
Yep.
We had to work with small businesses to identify issues that they had.
Yeah.
And that the government, we were pleased, resolved some of those issues and put our suggestions into the revised Act. But again, your recounting of the situation, while accurate, reinforces the need for change, because it is just so difficult in such a complex environment with so many stakeholders hanging on by their fingernails.
Yeah,
It's just out of date, and it's hurting workers.
And as I said, you and I have had many a discussion over many years now, and we've always worked constructively together in this regard. The commitment to improving the system for both employees and employers. Ultimately, though, it is difficult to get through the Australian Senate. But I think what it does show, though, is it's not then therefore about one policy lever. If that policy lever is pulling difficult to actually pull and properly implement because of the nature of the Australian Senate, you do then need to look at other ways that you can deliver for small business. And certainly you and I have long talked about lowering taxes. And certainly when you look at, say, the tax rate for small business, under the Australian Labor Party it was 30%. Under us it is currently 25%. So whilst that's not the industrial relations system as such, it is another way that you can ensure that you're giving back to small business. I know throughout COVID-19, certainly even just the ability to change the way you process documents to allow for that, the e-technology certainly assists them. The availability of the instant asset write-off and that ability to say to them, if you have that capacity to invest in your business, the government's going to back you every step of the way. So if one lever proves difficult, there are other levers that you can then look to utilise to ensure that you are responding in every possible way to that commitment that they are the backbone of the Australian economy, that they deserve to be backed by government, which is what we do. But I think in relation to those changes, the omnibus bill is the perfect example, a very reasonable bill, one that would have, provided both employers and employees with a more productive workplace, but we couldn't get it through the Senate. But I was grateful for the support that you gave on the Rosato decision.
You raised changing the tax system, or fiddling with the tax system, and I don't mean that derogatorily.
No, I know what you're saying. No, understood.
The tax system makes the Fair Work Commission look simple. Fair Work Act looks simple. It doesn't fix basic safety protections that have gone AWOL in workplace relations. It doesn't fix the basic employer-employee relationship, which is the primary relationship of any workplace and must be such. So what we need is something that's comprehensively reformed and brought back to something simple that looks after the primary workplace relationship between employer and employee.
Just on safety, and obviously, I think each one of us that just has to be paramount in the workplace. There's no two ways about that. And I know when I first came into the portfolio, and I worked very closely with Mr Hare on this, we were presented with obviously the outcome of the Boland Review, and that was something that I looked at. And as you know, there are model work health and safety laws, and the Commonwealth works with the state and territories to ensure that we can effect change that is recommended to us. We had the Boland Review, we had the recommendations of the Boland Review, and I worked constructively with our state and territory colleagues, regardless of political persuasion. If you're the relevant minister, I work with you. And I was very pleased that within, I think, Mr Hare, about a few weeks of me formally coming into the portfolio, we had agreed across Australia, all relevant ministers, to accept all of the recommendations coming out of the Boland Review. So certainly when it comes to work health and safety, I have a very good relationship with state and territory ministers, and we will be able to make improvements to the model work health and safety laws together by accepting all of the Boland Review's recommendations.
Well, notwithstanding what you just said, I have enjoyed working with Mr Hare. I found him easy to deal with and open to deal with. So, but
Thank you for that feedback.
There are people being severely injured and not even reported, and then being threatened if they dare raise safety issues in this country, and that's not good enough. So I'm happy to leave it there, but it is an issue that's really important and we will be pushing it.
No, and thank you for those questions, Senator Roberts.